They wanted to keep little Johnny in a bubble. But we're no longer allowed to talk about being manly. But Johnny can't be whatever the hell he wants. Johnny's eating glue sticks. You want to know what really pisses me off?
Well, I mean, this isn't part of the interview, but sure, go ahead.
You know what really pisses me off is that I think back to September 11th. And we were in class, and I was sitting in history class, and we watched the towers fall. We watched thousands of Americans be killed on American soil. And not to minimize this by any means, but we all went back to class. We finished the day. We had difficult conversations. We had, you know, obviously a lot of pain and a lot of emotion, but we went on with our day. Because that's what you do when you're an American. And yet we look at schools like Hampshire College, where we saw the day after Donald Trump was elected president through a democratic and completely legal process, we see places like this school that cancel freaking classes for the entire day or for the entire week in a lot of cases so they can teach the freaking students how to mourn the death of America. And we wonder why we're creating a bunch of pussies or how this happened. We have done this to this generation. We're no longer teaching kids about principles and about our country. We're teaching them how to be pansies. This is the same freaking school that doesn't assign letter grades to students anymore. Do you want to know why they don't assign letter grades to students? Because they don't want to hurt little Johnny's feelings when he gets a D because he got shit-faced all night long and didn't study for the exam because we don't want to hurt Johnny Boy's feelings. That's not acceptable. So we have moved on, and instead of being in the day and age where we see a horrible tragedy and we learn how to process it and we learn how to deal with it, instead we're creating safe spaces for these little pansies and giving them therapy dogs and crayons so that they can get through a historic process. It is out of control. You know, for just 1 second, I want to go back to September 11th. You want to know how a lot of people that I know handled it? The day after September 11th, they went and they talked to Army and Navy recruiting offices. They ended up, after graduation, fighting with their families and fighting with their parents because they wanted to join the military. They wanted to protect our country. They wanted to fight for everything that we stood for. They wanted to fight for everything that happened on September 11th. They wanted to fight for that freedom and to protect this nation. And so they went into the military. And they went overseas, and they fought. And I don't really give a shit if people agree with what happened in Iraq or Afghanistan. These young men and women, and at the time they were just boys and girls, they went over there because they were principled and because they believed in our country. And they went over there and they watched their best friends be slaughtered next to them. They watched their best friends be killed, and then they came back on a plane, the survivors standing between the caskets of their best friends with the American flag draped over it. And you don't want to know what these people had to come home to? These veterans who served our country and who continue to serve our country had to come home to these little shit stains in our country burning the American flag because that was a cool challenge on Facebook. Talk about spitting in the face of the people who defend our right to burn that flag. It's absolutely despicable. Nothing pisses me off more than seeing that blatant disrespect of saying it doesn't matter that you went over there and you fought for our country and you saw your friends be murdered. We want the right to be able to kneel during the national anthem. Fine, you have that right. But it still gives us the right to call you an asshole and to call it for what it is. I mean, how about our first responders? How about our police? How about the fact that our police officers once had the benefit of the doubt? They once had the benefit of the doubt because they serve our communities. They protect us. They're the first person that these little shits will call when something's bad is happening to them. The police are the first ones they call. And then they'll turn around and say what pigs and killers cops are. It's completely disrespectful. Everything is backwards. We no longer have the respect for the veterans. We no longer have the respect for the men and women who serve and protect this country. 22 suicides every single day from the men and women who serve our country. And don't even get me started on the way that police are treated these days. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So you see it in the media all the time. It's these social justice warrior assholes who don't respect the men and women who are serving and protecting and who are ensuring that when they're getting the shit kicked out of them for being a little shit on the side of the road, the police are the first ones that they call. And yet These social justice warriors want to make sure that the police are convicted of every little thing, whether or not they did something wrong. They want to make sure that they're convicted in the court of public opinion. So they go on Facebook, and they go on Instagram, and they go on Twitter, and they go on Snapchat, and they shoot little live videos that are completely out of context with the entire scenario. And I mean, God, these social justice warriors, and I know I keep harping on that, but look at freaking Hampshire College again, right? The cops at Hampshire College are not allowed to be armed. They are special state officers, and they are not allowed to be armed on campus. Do you know why they're not allowed to be armed? Because the sight of a gun and the sight of a cop triggers these little snowflakes. Think about that for a second. The sight of a cop and the sight of a gun. How, after graduation, how do they survive outside of their parents' basement without getting hit by a public transportation bus every single day? How do they make it?